and welcome to the Dental Handoff. I'm Dr. Kelly Tanner. Today I have with me Teresa Duncan. Teresa, thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, we were learning that we both live in Virginia. She's snowing and I'm raining where we are today, current time.
Aren't we lucky?
Yeah, ready. How many more days till spring? I think, Teresa, when this airs, it will actually be springtime. So happy spring, everyone. Yay.
Spring. Wow.
Future tense. Teresa, we always start with the question, why dentistry for you? Did it choose you? Did you choose it?
No, it was totally accidental. Like one of the names of my classes is the accidental insurance coordinator because nobody chooses it. And I kind of feel like that's how a lot of us entered in that didn't come in through a degree. We just kind of accidentally just snuck in there. I actually had been waitlisted for two medical schools. And so I needed something to do in the year. And I applied to work at an office and I was like, okay, I guess I'll be a dental assistant slash receptionist because it was a small office. And from there, I just remember thinking, I kind of like this. My boss was amazing. He was great. And that made a huge difference, honestly. Like I think if I had landed in an office where it wasn't fantastic, I would probably be doing something totally different. But I really appreciated the time he took. And then the business side of it was just fascinating, right? So I ended up being a receptionist slash assistant. And this is going to make you laugh. There was not enough room in the operatory that we were both standing. So I was a stand up dental assistant. We did not sit. There was not enough room for chairs in the back of the operatory. So we stood, both of us.
It's so
And
different from stand-up comedy.
yeah, no, and harder on the bbody, let me tell you, with all the
Oh,
turning and
wow.
all that. So,
Yeah.
and then in the middle of a appointment, I would have the amalgam because back when we were doing a lot of amalgam, I would have the amalgam carrier ready for him, the phone to ring, and then he'd have to do it himself. It was just totally different times. And the phone was literally the next room over, so everybody could hear everything. It was wild. And then of course we grew into, multi locations, all that kind of stuff. But it is very interesting for me to come from a pre-med and classical civilizations background to go into dentistry to learn that really the crux of it all is making somebody happy and healthy, and that was not really, like, the biggest driver of what I wanted to do. So that was kind of a wake-up call, like, "Ooh, this feels good to see them all happy."
Okay, wait. Your background was in what? Classical civilizations?
Classical civilizations. I was classical civ, classics, philosophy, and religion. That was my I double majored, pre-med and then that. And
Okay.
yeah, so I knew all the philosophy stuff. I knew about Greeks and Romans and all of their festivities and then I would pop on over to the bio lab and pretty much live there. That's what you probably remember those days. You just live
Oh, yeah.
and then, coming out in dentistry, teeth, I'd never thought about teeth before, ever, like, besides going to get your teeth cleaned. So, yeah, totally different arena and fell in love with it. Really
What
did.
did you fall in love with? So that's why you became the accidental dental individual, everything except
Yeah.
for, as you say, the person who goes to school to have a license, I guess.
Yeah.
So what made you fall in love with it? Because it
So
was so different.
well, you know what? It was really scary at first because you don't know a lot of the terms. I didn't know a lot of the terms. And having a mentor, my boss, who I still work for very part-time, I still, kind of oversee things like just on a very high level to make sure things are okay. Um, Having him just be really open about the business and show me the ins and out, I pretty much got a crash course in business from him.
Yeah.
And so having somebody that takes the time to explain things and really make it make sense, that honestly, that was a gift. I mean, in any industry, when you find that, that's a gift. And here's the other thing, and I, it's really wild for me to think about it now because I don't know if we can replicate that really in dentistry today. I was in charge of so much at such a young age. Like, I was like, the whole operations of it, of course, he was there and watching, but the operations of it was my responsibility. And when you give somebody responsibility and there's millions of dollars, at that point, not millions, but, pretty decent
Right.
amount of money flowing
Enough.
through,
Yeah.
and you're in charge of all these rules and regulations and compliance, like, you really do get a crash course, and you're like, when you own something, so what he did was he gave me ownership of something,
Mm.
and when you find yourself owning a process from start to finish and you see how one mistake you make here implements it, really affects it down here. And I know I'm talking in vague concepts, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
Realizing that, this today would have been a lot easier if back here I would have done something differently. You start to see that. And I remember thinking, I don't want to go like, I don't want to go back to school right now, which really broke my mom's heart. So, I never reapplied for medical school. And, my mom was like, "What are you doing?" And that was a really hard conversation. But the ownership piece, the mentor piece, it just felt like I had landed in the right place, and that was important to me at the time, and thank God it was, because then it led to all of what I am doing now.
yeah, and it seems like that ownership piece is what you leaned into because you could reflectively look back and say, "If I would have done this, how could I have done that better, and how could I make sure that that gets done?" And then it sounds like today, and I know that you will tell your story, that's what you set people up for, to do that, right? The systematic and the accountability piece, and accountability not as a bad word. Some people think that
Mhm.
accountability is so like, ooh, like micromanaging with the thumb
Right,
on.
right.
It's really accountability to yourself,
Yes. Yes,
right?
absolutely, and when you can take pride in a job well done, that really is what gets a lot of people started, right? So, and of course, if you're and sometimes you chase it, right? Like, you get into a project and you're like, "I want that really good feeling," but on a daily basis, you're getting little wins, and I mean, now I know they're little dopamine hits, when you get off the phone with a patient, the patient's like, "Thank you so much, and I feel so much better." Those are little dopamine hits, and I didn't realize it back then, but they all led up to me chasing a successful day, a big deposit slip, the fact that tomorrow's schedule was completely full, that we had a good ASAP list, that we were expanding. Like, chasing all those little wins as a business owner is pretty exciting. But as a manager who's not a business owner, it's still exciting, right? So I hear a lot of doctors saying, "Well, I'm never going to hire a good manager because they don't have ownership mentality," and I'm like, "That's BS." Like, I didn't own the practice, but I had ownership mentality. I know lots of managers who really agonize over leaving their office because they pretty much helped build it.
Yeah.
And so don't tell me that it's ownership mentality. Like, I bet plenty of doctors that don't have ownership mentality. So,
So what
you
do you
know.
think the staying power is though? Because I believe that I mean, even hygienists, any team member,
Mhm.
when they leave, they feel bad because they leave their patients because they feel that sense of ownership. And what do you think, in your opinion, your world, your perspective, gives someone that ownership mentality so they want to stay?
Well, and I do think it does have to do with personality, at its core. There are some people that that's just not what motivates them, right? But when you link into someone and they're teachable, and then they start to come up with their own thought processes, um, and then they start to build on its own. I mean,
Mhm.
I find that people who enjoy puzzles, and I know this is so basic, but people who enjoy puzzles are good, insurance coordinators. They're good treatment plan coordinators. That just seems to be something there. And just from years of training them, the one thing I hear from insurance coordinators is it's like a puzzle. I have to figure out how to get this claim paid. And when you translate it to being a treatment coordinator, which I did for years and I loved it, basically I had to find what was it that motivated this person. And if it's not oral health, what is it then? So then
Yeah.
you got to go there. I mean, you're having clinical conversations all the time. So what really falls into that ownership? Well, I really love the idea of everybody waking up and wanting to build great things, but not everybody does that. So, it's hard for me to say what really is that. Just somebody who has innate leadership ability, somebody who has great pride and has felt great pride in things. And that's something too, Kelly, like, there's not a lot of people coming into our industry because 'cause they're younger, they're newer, they haven't been involved in big projects, they haven't had the opportunity. When have they been able to take and own a project?
Mhm.
Maybe not ever. Maybe they were always part of group projects in school. Maybe they were always on a team and not an independent sport.
Yeah.
When have they been able to lead a team and own it? Not often. So, as a manager, giving somebody a project, if they're not loving the fact that they did a good job. I would say they probably don't have ownership mentality,
Mhm.
but when they show it, then I'm gonna keep giving them things, right? And then that is gonna be their domain, right?
And then sometimes, to your point, because they haven't had an opportunity to experience that before, I think it's the first time when you do, because I'm sitting here thinking, I grew up in team sports. I wasn't really thinking now, I'm not really sure what I was leading. But when I got to the office, I knew that I had a certain domain that I had certain domain over, right? And with
Mhm.
with doctors' input, with teams' input, but the other so there's that me portion of it, but then the office and the culture has to be open to you
Yeah.
having that quote on autonomy and domain over that as well. Because sometimes you'll get a little bit of rope and then you're micromanaged. And it's like, well, wait, and then you get confused. And so you end up just not trying
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
discouraged.
Well, and you're gonna keep getting, "Well, that was great, but you coulda done this better." I've definitely coached a lot of managers on that, but I also was a terrible manager in my early days because I very much was of the mindset of, "I could do it, why can't you do it?" Which honestly, I'd never had management classes or anything like that, right? And my science-y brain saw it as if this, then that, and I was like, why didn't you do that?" Like, "Well, I don't understand." And so learning how bad of a manager I was, I can reflect back and I can see it in other managers when I talk to them. And I very gently try to let them know, that's if you always do the job and you don't let anyone else do the job, you're always going to do that job. You're never going to grow into another job. So if you really like that job, then keep doing what you're doing, and it's just, you gotta kind of change the perspective a little bit. And as a manager in one office for years, you don't get a lot of different perspective. As a hygienist in one operatory for years, if you don't venture out and take CE, if you don't venture out and meet other hygienists, same for managers, you don't realize that what you're doing is really not ideal. And
Right.
that's humbling for a lot of people when they do meet their colleagues and realize, okay, my office isn't as amazing as I thought it was. It's definitely humbling. I've seen it.
Yeah, too, and I'm thinking too that one of the things that we are, not as incredibly good at is delegating.
Yeah.
So, like the front office managers, I mean, I've worked in large groups like coaching hygiene teams and being that lead and leading certain aspects of teams over my career, like in formal positions or informal. And sometimes the front office individual had such a sense of pride, and maybe they've had bad experiences where they don't wanna let anybody take over anything, or I don't know if I wanna even let someone else confirm those calls or confirm the patients or
Yeah.
file the claim or whatever. So, Teresa, do you have good advice or, like, experience on how a person can begin to delegate and to try to figure out where they start with that?
Yeah, so here's this, and since my audience is mostly managers and young doctors, this is something that comes up all the time, Kelly.
Mm,
So when I'm talking to a manager and they're like, "Well, I can't delegate." Well, and then what cracks me up, I have this minion meme that I'll share with them where it basically says, or I'm sorry, it's a little baby Yoda meme where it's like, "Here, let me help you do that." And then, "No, not that way." And he's kind of like, "No, not that way." And that's because we're helping them, but you can't just like smack them down when they're not doing exactly your way. There's 500 ways to get to one destination. So
yeah.
maybe they're going to do something that's going to blow your mind because you never thought of it, right? I mean, good Lord, I would still be writing in a paper appointment book if I weren't open to these things, right? And I remember,
Long pages.
oh my god, I fought giving that up because I thought there's no way the computer is gonna lose it. I have all these sticky notes in places. How am I gonna lose my, it was so crazy. But my feedback to them is when you're trying to train somebody, if your fingers are on the keyboard or if you're answering the phone, you're not training anyone. You're just showing them. So I want you to step away from the keyboard, step away from the phone, let them do it because if they mess up, they're going to remember it. And when they do mess up, because they will, and it's okay to tell them, look, you're going to screw this up. I screwed it up. Let's just get through it. Um, when you're there to gently correct, that's different. But it is hard because there are times when you're training people and they're just not getting it. I think that's the frustration. That's when, as a manager, you don't think about the 10 people that you trained successfully and took to it like a duck to water. You think of that one person that drove you nuts. And so you assume everyone's going to be like that, right?
Right, right.
So, yeah, so I will say to them, don't just grab the keyboard out of frustration. Don't, go ahead and say transfer the phone to me when a patient's getting frustrated. You know what? Patients got frustrated with me too. I didn't have anyone to transfer it to. I had to learn. I had to learn how to deal with that angry patient, and I wish I had had somebody next to me telling me what to say,
Yeah, hold
right?
please.
Oh, my goodness. So I would say, you gotta give them grace, and you have to keep in mind that when you can offload this task, now you can do other things that you've been wanting to do. And part of that is getting them to make a list of the things they can never seem to get to. All right.
Yeah,
So you have to do that first, honestly, because then you can say, I wish I could have more time to look at the numbers. I wish I could have more time to meet on a regular basis with clinical, departments, all that kind of stuff. So you keep as a coach, you gotta keep throwing that out there. "Remember how you wanna do this?" Verifying eligibility all day is not what you're good at. Why are
right.
we paying you tons of money to do something that, you could be doing something else? So it's a long process, as you know, to break someone of a habit, because that's really what it is. It's you're breaking a habit, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, and breaking that sense of needing control over it too,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
ultimately if the person isn't doing it right, quote unquote, if they're not successful, if something falls through the cracks, it does come back to you.
Mhm.
And so to have those certain guardrails of starting here and then giving them a little bit more and then a little bit more, but still supporting them
Yeah,
in their new role as the and you're the supporting actress instead of the central actress
right.
in that equation. But I love that you said, encouraging them gently to let them fail, to let them go through the motions because the only way to go through it is through it, right? The
Yeah,
only way
yeah.
to get to it is to go through it, is the saying.
Well, you've gotta let their brain noodle through it, and if you don't
Mhm.
tell them how to do it, if you don't let them do that, then you're just telling them the steps. Like, people steps are fine, they're great, they look good on a graphic, but I'd rather have somebody have the steps kinda appear in their minds, like, as they go, and you can't foster that if you're just pointing them in directions. It's just not gonna
Yeah,
work.
true. Yeah, never sticks.
No.
So
Mm-mm.
Teresa, what are you on to now? You've done all of this in your career. What are you up to?
So I've stepped away from speaking a little bit, so my schedule has been cut in half because it's a lot, being on the road, it's hard work. People think it's, like, amazing, and I wanna go be a speaker, and I'm like, "Yeah, if you don't wanna see your family very often, it's a great career," you know? So come on the road with us and meet all the other speakers that are like, "Yeah, my husband couldn't come," or, "Yeah, my kid's doing this," so, that's a whole different thing. Um, but I have enjoyed my time, and I'm thankful that I was given opportunities to, share information, but it's time now for me to what I like to call leave the ladder down for other people. There's other insurance speakers, management speakers that are younger, more energetic, and have lots of great views. And so I'm mentoring a ton of them and helping them get gigs. And now when I get called for insurance, classes, which is usually what I talk about, I've got names that I'm sending to the meeting planners and helping them get booked. I still have the online class and I still give my classes and tons of webinars and all that and the podcast, of course. But um, I've really poured myself into a new venture called Dental Revenue Network. And it's for insurance billers and company owners, billing company owners. And it's sort of an advanced revenue cycle management membership where a lot of times on Facebook and all the forums, you'll see people asking, "Well, what's the code for this and what's the code for that?" And I'm past that. I like you should own a code book, honestly. Like I'm past that.
I always recommend. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more, how do you manage the system and how do you have conversations with your patients and how do you handle these contract disputes and issues and much more higher level strategic conversations. And the billing company owners are entrepreneurs. So I've really been enjoying mentoring entrepreneurs, and starting their businesses. So, yeah, it's been fun. And again, I'm learning a lot about having my own membership. This is my first time doing it. I've had a couple mistakes where I'm going, I probably didn't think that out, but also new opportunities coming. I'm getting inquiries from companies wanting to be members, and I have to
Mm,
think, is that and maybe 15 years ago, Teresa would have said, "Oh, there's revenue tied to that. Let's see how we can make it work." And now I'm thinking, does it fit? Does it fit my vision?
yeah.
So, is that who I'm creating this for? And the answer is no. But realizing that I'm turning down money, now I have to think, well, how do I then change that around? How do I bring these people to the audience? And those are questions that I never thought about when I started the membership. So, just like we were talking, there's now all these new opportunities being thrown at me, and my brain has to noodle this through. There's no checklist. Like now I'm like, okay, I have to really think pros, cons, SWOTs, all the strategy stuff,
Yeah.
which, so I'm really enjoying life right now. I am.
Yeah, I think it's important as a business owner. Well, one thing to know that it doesn't have to be perfect to get started.
Yeah.
Two, to be clear, like you just mentioned, to of who you want to serve and what it's about, and so you know when it's not in alignment of like your core values.
Hmm.
And when something new comes my way, just like you're saying, it's like, okay, does this align with where I see myself going towards? Because that's number one. And if not, then who else can I refer to that's already
Yeah.
doing that or who may be amazing at that? And to noodle it. And so also to your point, like compounding the point, you wouldn't have ever known those things unless you would have stepped outside of your comfort zone to
Absolutely.
have your membership plan. And you were talking about a mastermind group that you guys have of friends. And I have one too that we sit around and it's like, okay, here's a big idea. Tell me what's wrong with it. Tell
Right.
me what I'm missing. Show me my blind spots.
Yeah.
And those are invaluable to be part of those groups and networks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And part of that is too, I mean, you and I were talking kind of in the pregame that when you have a mindset of abundance rather than, what can I take from this mastermind and steal it for my own? Or, what are they doing because maybe I can beat them at it? Like that's such a hard way of thinking. It's not healthy. So when you find people who have that same mindset, it's so important to realize that and keep them close because they're going to help you grow. You said something about we were just talking about the being clear on things. And one thing that I think, your listeners and my listeners who are looking at aspiring into bigger things, you will get asked to do, other things. It's that whole scope creep, issue. And as a consultant and coach for yourself, like you probably met people who loved working with you. So they wanted to work with you in this way. And you're like, oh, I could do that. But does that really make you happy? And that's how I became a consultant, a practice management consultant was I was doing very limited trainings and then all of a sudden I was a practice management consultant because they kept wanting to work with me. And then I realized one day I had two consultants working for me. I woke up and realized this is not what am I doing? I don't like this. And that was a big career pivot to shut down that side of the business and focus on just revenue cycle training. But that is exact and it happens so slowly you don't realize it. And I don't know if that's happened to you, but it's very easy to say, "Oh, thank you for having faith in me. Yeah, let's go ahead and do it." And then you're like, "What am I doing?"
But Teresa, the reality is that almost every single business owner has gone through that
Mhm.
where you pivot. That's where that word comes in to pivot because it's either you realize that you are headed in a direction where you're like, this is really impacting XYZ,
Mhm.
or maybe it's an area that doesn't light you up. Or sometimes your business isn't doing well. So, what is sticky? What will gain traction? So, you renew yourself in a different direction. That is the beauty of it. I think a lot of people get scared of owning their own business or going in their own direction or having a side hustle because it's too risky.
Mhm.
The risk is in not taking the risk
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
every time.
Listen, you're gonna have times when you're gonna check the phone line to see if it works or the email to see if it works because 'cause you're like, "Where I thought I was supposed to be swimming in business. What happened?" But you just gotta have faith that you are the product, you have a good product, and you'll be okay. But, yeah, it is scary turning down business, though, because you think, I turn this down, I'm not gonna get where's the next deal coming from? And it is a hustle, though. It is a hustle because you're always having to fill that pipeline of potential customers coming down, and that's when you realize if you're good in sales, you'll be all right. And some of us had to work a little harder at it. So, yeah, it's a hustle, but again, there's I guess that's the new dopamine hit for me is this new hustle of staying business and figuring out what's good for me. That's to me the
Yeah.
new dopamine, I guess.
Yeah, it's that clarity again, because when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. It could be your own well-being, it could be your family, it could be whatever. So you just have to be I mean, we've been in the mentality of like just say yes and get started. I believe in that. But there's a
Mhm.
part and I know with you and like other business owners and even other parts of our lives, if you're not a business owner, if you're a mom or a dad, you can't say yes to everything because you're at capacity
Right.
and you're not focusing on what your priorities are, starting with you.
Mhm.
What's gonna really make you happy. So to get clear on that social core, your core values of who you are and how you do and how you wanna show up it attracts everything else around you, and it helps you say no to things that aren't serving you, to say, "I don't do that, but hey, I know someone. I know Teresa does." And
Right.
say, "Teresa, here's a handoff email."
Well, and sometimes that's a really good feeling sending that handoff email because now it's out of your email and you don't have to think about it again. So honestly, like I celebrate those moments. Like, okay, that project's somewhere else. I'm happy.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
helping. You're still helping and serving. It just and other folks appreciate the referral and they remember that because they think, "Oh, they honored me enough and they've respected what I've done and what how I'm showing up as
Mhm.
a consultant or whoever it is and how you're showing up in your life that they chose me to refer to."
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think
Absolutely.
it gives it a couple different levels. Teresa, are there any last words that you want to offer the audience for today's session?
Well, just don't be afraid of screwing up. Everybody does it, and sometimes spectacularly. It's okay. You're going to recover for it. You're going to learn from it. And, that you're going to do great things. It is scary, though. It is scary to do something different because there's so much comfort in where you are right now. So, just take a chance. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. There's reasons for that as well, I believe. So, don't be afraid of it. But definitely find good friends from it for masterminding. That really has made a huge difference, and then, if you find somebody you gel with on a business level, like keep those people close. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, and be intentional about setting time with them to be like, "Okay, we have to connect."
Right. Yes. And I know you're going to meet amazing people through this career,
Yeah,
and it's hard to reconnect with people regularly. Sometimes you got to calendar it, right?
you
So,
do.
but I want to thank you for bringing me on. It was a really nice to get the invitation. So I very much
Oh,
appreciate it.
Teresa, it's an honor. Thank you so much for your time. For you guys, if you want more of Teresa Duncan in your life and you want more about her dental revenue network, you can get the information in the show notes below. And for all the listeners, you know that I always ask a favor of you to go on over to Apple Podcast to give a 5-star rating because Apple's the one that matters, right, Teresa?
That's what they tell me, and it's true.
Yeah, and then if you're watching this on YouTube, please be kind and press the like button and subscribe so the algorithm recommends our show to others who may enjoy it. Thank you, my friends. We will see you soon. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.